She found him in the quarantine cradle with storm sand still glittering along his brow. The human's eyes opened when her instruments pinged his pulse. He didn't flinch when she pressed a sensor against his throat ridge. Humans had no ridges, she reminded herself, only those soft lines where a Kalari would carry a stabilizer gland. "You're awake," she said, too dry. "Good. It's inefficient to study a subject that keeps dying." He smiled, slow and irritatingly bright. "And here I was worried about your bedside manner." Her name was Lyrics, sector biologist, 5th nodule. Protocol listed him as Rec Rescue Specimen 13. The crash had fed the station a rare prize. A living human, the first she'd seen outside the sterile reports. Curiosity nipped at her fingers. She prodded the musculature of his forearm, measuring resilience, the peculiar human heat. He watched her with that open mammalian calm and said, "Do you do this to all your guests?" "Only the interesting ones," she said before she could stop herself. A storm moaned across the station hull, a deep-bellied sound that the metal returned, and her crest prickled. Humans, the notes said, were born among weather and hunger. Lyrics pressed the scanner to his ribs, mapping his lungs. He winced. "Gentle," he whispered. "I'm more breakable than I look." "I know exactly how breakable you are," she said, tapping the readout. "You are inconveniently alive." "Evan," he said, "since you're taking things from me, take my name too." She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself the word tasted strange in her mouth because of the recycled air. "Evan, breathe deep." He obeyed. The lights flickered, paused, and returned with a skitter of sparks along the overhead cable. Lyrics's crest flattened. On the third flicker, an alarm pealed short, brutal notes that every Kalari spine learned to hate. "Ghost missed breach," said the station's bored artificial voice. "Containment compromised. All personnel to blue corridors." Lyrics froze. Ghost mist was a valley-borne phenomenon, a clear, nerve-blind toxin that crept through vents and paralyzed any Kalari who breathed it. Lyrics had papers on it. She also had no filter mask. Evan slid off the cradle. He swayed once, then steadied. "Where?" "Blue corridors," she said through her teeth, and the doors sighed shut in their faces as the safety seals engaged. "Of course," he muttered. All the wrong blue doors closed. Lyrics hit the override and it rattled uselessly. Already the air tasted sweet in the dangerous way. Her limbs wanted to hum with stillness. "We haven't time." "Hey!" He reached for her, stupid, presumptuous, and she almost snapped at him before she realized his hands were sure. "You're about to lock up. Where's your stabilizer node?" He stared. "That is not a human question." "Your colleague mentioned it while bragging in the hangar," he said. "A control point near the collar. A nerve pearl you use to ride out storms." "Where?" "Left clavicle," she said, because her fingertips were already tingling. "Okay. This will be weird. Don't deck me." He bent in close. His breath was warm with the metallic bite of the station air. Then his teeth found the exact notch above her collarbone, a precise pressure, nothing cruel, and bit down. Her knees failed like cut lines. The room swung. The ghost mist sweetness thinned into sharp clarity. The bite wasn't pain. It was an anchor, an old bodily memory tugged from somewhere pre-language. Her muscles, which had been braced to freeze, loosened into action. She caught the wall and forced herself upright. "What did you do?" she demanded, and hated the tremor in her voice. "Field trick," Evan said, cheeks flushed. "We trained with pack animals on Ganymede. They had shock nodes. Pressure bite interrupts the lockup loop. Humans don't have good ridges, but I've got decent teeth." That was effective. Lyrics swallowed. Do not do it again without explicit consent. Copy, he said, and flashed her that troublesome smile. Iran. The blue corridor lights strobed as blast shutters thumped into place. Twice they ducked under doors just before they scissored shut. Lyrics's skin sang with adrenaline. She catalogued this sensation with clinical betrayal. Evan moved like a creature built for gravity and hazard, herding her away from thin-walled labs toward the armored spine. He didn't ask which way to go. He simply chose the right ones and expected her to follow. In Maintenance 3, a trio of scavengers had pried the service hatch open. They wore scavjunk armor and had the black-lidded eyes of people who treated mercy like a rumor. The first raised a cutter. Lyrics shoved Evan behind a crate and went forward. She was not fragile. She had not been promoted for the neatness of her notes. The cutter sizzled the air where she'd been, struck conduit, showered sparks. Lyrics slid low, caught the wielder's wrist and turned. He screamed, the cutter clanged free. Evan surged from behind the crate, scooped up a magnetic clamp, and slapped it onto another scavenger's thigh. The clamp locked him to the deck with a gratifying clang. The third raised a coil gun. Evan threw a wrench. Lyrics kicked the coil gun aside and drove the scavenger into the wall. When it was done, she was breathing hard and smiling despite herself. Noted, Evan said, equally breathless. You throw a mean lab report. They sealed the hatch and sprinted for MedCore. Lyrics's head swam once, twice. Residual toxin. If I drop, she said. Bite again. He didn't joke. Yes, doctor. They reached MedCore as the station shuttered. Power dipped. The doors stuttered, opened handspan and stuck. Evan jammed his fingers in and grunted. Lyrics shouldered it, ghost mist or not. Together they forced the doors wide. Inside, the filters were stacked like metallic flowers. Lyrics snapped one to Evan's face, another to her own, and felt her brain clear by slow degrees. She set the emergency purge on a station-wide cycle and watched the red lights wink to amber. Silence pooled in the medbay. Your records, Evan said softly. Call me 13. She looked at him, at the sweat shining in his hairline, the wrench grease on his wrist from some long-ago ship. They're out of date. And you? Lyrics's crest had half risen without her notice. She flattened it with effort. I signed a contract to observe, not to be observed back. He leaned against the counter. Observation goes both ways. It's almost like conversation. He'd bitten her, she thought, and the echo lived in her bones like a bell. She felt foolishly grateful and unreasonably aware of the curve of his mouth. The sensation was not entirely scientific. We can get you off station, she said, because decisions felt safer than feelings. There's a survey shuttle in the dorsal bay. I'll file you as a contracted consultant. That will cause paperwork. I'm honored, he said gravely. I like to be somebody's paperwork. They moved together again, quieter now, as the alarms eased into the ordinary hum of machinery. In the dorsal bay, the storm had thinned to a bruised blue. The shuttle blinked patient lights. Lyrics keyed the hatch with her clearance. It opened like a yawn. Evan, she said before he stepped inside. He turned. Next time, she said, you ask before you put your teeth on a Kalari. He looked properly chastened, then daring. And if I ask? Then, she said, and let the door of her voice open a fraction. We decide together. They cleared the bay on a pillar of controlled fire and rose above the storm. The planet's halo gilded the shuttle nose. Lyrics watched the station shrink behind them, a ring of secrets and instruments. She'd poked and prodded the human because that was what the work required. The work had answered back with a wrench thrown at a coil gun, a ridiculous magnetic clamp, a smile like dawn, and a bite that had turned her knees to water and her fear to motion. On the far side of the sky, there were ports that didn't ask who you were before they let you in. She decided, in that clean light, to learn his world as carefully as she had measured his pulse. Observation, conversation, consent. In every language that mattered.